You referred more than a dozen times in your testimony to the Ministry of Truth. And I just want to be clear about this. The Ministry of Truth was one of 4 government ministries in Oceania in Orwell's fictional 1984. It does not exist in the United States or anywhere on Earth. Do you disagree with that?
No, I referred to it, as I said, as a shorthand, a joking shorthand.
Okay. Well, I just never heard a scientist refer to a fictional entity so repeatedly and so consistently as something real in the world. But in any event, in your Great Barrington Declaration, you advocated a strategy that would allow the virus to spread freely by, quote, natural infection, unquote, while attempting to protect those who were most vulnerable, all in the period before vaccines were authorized and widely available. Is that a fair statement of what your position was?
No. The central tenet of the Great Barrington Declaration was focused protection of the vulnerable.
Well, let me read what you wrote then, just so we don't get into a back and forth. The Great Barrington Declaration advocates for an approach that would, quote, here's the entire sentence, the most compassionate approach that balances the risks and benefits of reaching herd immunity is to allow those who are at minimal risk of death to live their lives normally, to build up immunity to the virus through natural infection, while better protecting those who are at highest risk. Who was at highest risk on your understanding?
There's a 1,000-fold difference in the risk of death for people who are older versus younger.
And older at what age?
So it increases exponentially. So for every 7 or 8 years of age, it doubles.
Okay, but in other words, if you had just been able to design your focused attention strategy, you would have focused on what, ages 75 and up or 65 and up? In other words, you seem to have an on-off switch. A certain part of the population should be protected as much as possible, and then it's a laissez-faire strategy for everybody else. So at what age does that begin?
There was no beginning or ending age. The key thing was identifying who's vulnerable and what living circumstances.
So who did you identify?
So older people, so people living in nursing homes are 40%
well,
of death.
The way this position has been interpreted is 65 and up. And certainly a lot more people 65 and up died than people younger. I think it was 171,000 between 65 and 74 and around 200,000 from 75 to 84. But in the years between 50 and 64, 137,650 people died. From 40 to 50, 31,000 people. 30 to 39, 13,000 people. 18 to 29, 4,300. And then 595 lower than 17, but that's still, we're still talking about, a couple 100,000 people. So I just want everyone to understand that precisely as you're saying today, it is a sliding scale. It's not like you get to a certain age and suddenly you're vulnerable and before that you're fine. I understand you met with former President Trump's HHS Secretary Alex Azar and Special Advisor Scott Atlas to discuss your strategy. Is that right?
We met with Azar. Yes. Can I answer the previous question?
Well, let me. At the end, I can. I just got to get through a couple of things. Your meeting took place just one day after your Great Barrington Declaration was published, and Azar tweeted after the meeting that you had provided strong reinforcement of the Trump administration's strategy of aggressively protecting the vulnerable while opening schools and the workplace. Have you read Deborah Birx's, Trump's coronavirus response coordinator's statements about how the Trump administration's lethargic and indifferent response to COVID-19 could have cost hundreds of thousands of lives? Have you read her statement?
She made that claim.
I'm sorry?
I've seen that she made that claim.
Yeah. In my mind, she told CNN almost 450,000 deaths could have been mitigated or decreased substantially. In other words, the kinds of policies that you implicitly gave credence to with your Great Barrington Declaration resulted, according to Donald Trump's own coronavirus coordinator, in the deaths of at least more than 100,000 people. And I wonder if you would just respond to that statement coming from Deborah Birx.
Sure. So first, and it's related to the answer that I had to your previous question. 100,000. The New York Times just reported today that 100,000 people died of drug overdoses. That was a lockdown harm. There was an estimate in the JAMA in pediatrics that as a result of just the spring school shutdown, we cost our children 5.5 million life years. COVID is not the only harm that we need to account for.
No, those were the result of COVID and the fact that we let the disease run wild. So that just compounds the original sin.
Those many places, there are places that did not close schools. Sweden, for instance, didn't close schools. No child deaths between 1 and 15, and teachers had COVID rates at lower rates than the rest of the population. It's not true to say that those are a result of COVID. Those are a result of policy.
My final question, I'm afraid out of time. Do you still oppose mask mandates when people are in public places?
So I never opposed mask mandates during the pandemic. I said that, in fact, we're arguing very strongly in favor of them, using them in nursing homes and other places. I am against mask mandates in schools.
Okay, I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.